Hey guys, this is a video to show you how to mix using Logic Pro X. This video will just show you the basics, some of the tools that Logic Pro has to offer, and anything past that is a lot of trial and error and just practicing and experimenting. So just to begin, I just wanted to go through some of the main tools that you'll be using. So this is your cursor. In Logic Pro, you'll be able to use two types of tools at any given time. So I always keep my primary tool as cursor. Sorry, these are the buttons to alter your tools. So I always keep my primary tool as cursor. It lets you drag, uh, tracks around, and yeah. So the cursor is always really important. The second tool I use is the marquee. The marquee tool is important because it basically lets you cut songs. So if I wanted to cut this song here, I would just switch to marquee and then double click it, and it would split the two. In order to switch between tools, you just hold Command and it'll switch for you. Some other useful tools to know: the fade tool is useful sometimes. It lets you, I guess, fade. Oops. Basically lets you fade the end of sections. So that's what I did here. That's done with the fade tool. It also lets you crossfade. So if you have two tracks next to each other, you can fade them into each other really well. So that's what I did here. The only other tool I've ever used is the flex tool. So the flex tool lets you elongate beats. That requires some practice to learn how to use, and you probably won't need it very often. So these are the main cursor tools that you'll be using. Then other things that are important, so these are each track individually. So when you want to hear one track at a time, you press S, which is the solo button. So then at any given time I can listen to one track. Another important is the mute button. So if you don't want to hear a specific track, you just press the M, and it'll let you mute a track individually. Some other important things to note. So these buttons are basically how you add tracks. So if I want to do this, it would add a new audio file, or you can just drag and drop. If I press this, it would actually add a new instrument track, which I never use for mixing. These are the plugins. So plugins are really important. They're one of the more useful tools in Logic Pro. Logic has a ton of plugins that are really useful. I'll go through the useful ones later, but on the left side is plugins for individual tracks, and on the right is plugins for the entire project. Finally, these are manual ways to do volume. The left is the volume for the individual track, the right is the volume for the overall track, and I'll show you how to use those a bit later. So yeah, so just to start mixing, one of the important things to know is that when you start a new project, for example here, you'd obviously pick empty project. I'll close this for now. So you do new project, go to audio, make it input 1, output 1 plus 2, create, and then from here you have your brand new track. So let me just open what I was working on before. So here we have a track that I've already made. This is one of the earlier projects that I made. So to add a track, you can go to your iTunes and just drag and drop. So I use the Second Coming instrumental. So it takes a few seconds for Logic to render it. Oh, just a heads up overall, Logic is obviously a super advanced tool, and it's mostly used for post-production. So a lot of the stuff it does takes a bit longer than probably the average mixing program. So just a heads up. So here I just added the instrumental. So I just added the instrumental here. Now I have a bhangra song that I picked out for the purposes of this. So we have this here. Okay, so I'll be mixing those two together. So the first thing you want to do, the two most important things of mixing are time and pitch. So in terms of time, the first thing you want to do is tempo match the two songs. So to do this, you can go to your original track here, and you can find the tempos one of two ways. You can either use this plugin called BPM counter, which you can find in metering BPM counter. So this will pretty much automatically tell you what it is after a few beats. So this is a super precise version of it, but you can usually just round up. So I'd probably use this as 85. Another way to do it is you can just use a BPM counter online and tap it out yourself to find the BPM of each track. So once that's done, usually what I like to do, and this is just my personal preference, is I'm gonna add a note. So I'll have this notepad open at all times, and just when I need to, when I know the BPM of something, I'll just write it down. So I'll write just blaze 85 BPMs. You don't have to do that. That's just something I prefer. So then I'll check the BPM of the bhangra song. Alright, so luckily they're the same speed, which is great. That means I don't need to actually change anything, but just for the purposes of this tutorial, let's say that the second coming instrumental was 81 beats per minute. So if I wanted to change something, then what I would do is I'd click on the track that I want to change. I'd go to File, go to Functions, and I'd go down to Time and Pitch Machine. Time and Pitch Machine is what you'll be using to change any tempo and any pitch. So then to do that, let's say I was trying to change the track from 81 beats per minute to 85 beats per minute. So then I would go to Original, put in 81, Destination, put in 85. Then I would press Process and Paste, and it would change it for me. Since I don't need to do that for now, I'm not going to actually click it. It might take a minute or two, and it might seem like the program is frozen. I would wait it out. Usually it's not frozen. Usually it's just processing. It takes a little bit of time. So that's how you change the tempo. Now changing pitch is a little bit trickier. You sort of just need to have an ear to hear when things are pitch matched and when things are not. What I like to do is if I wanted to change, for example, let's say I wanted to change this track. So what I would do is I would probably, so let's just take this track by itself. So one thing you can do is there's a plugin here called, there's a plugin here called pitch and then pitch shifter. So I could pick that, and then I'll change the mix to 100. Then basically what this does is you can hear a really quick version of pitch alteration. So if this is normal, then I can pitch it up. So then doing that, you can basically hear what the track sounds like in different pitches. So then what I usually do is I will play both tracks that I'm mixing at the same time, and then I will put this pitch shift up and pitch shift accordingly. So obviously it's not beat matched yet or put into place, but what I would do is I would just put those tracks in place. Maybe I can do it with these two. Okay, well they're already pitch matched, but basically I would play these together, put the pitch shift on, and then I would just play around with it. So I would do that until I eventually found the pitch that was correct. So then once I know what the pitch is, I would probably usually write that down to, in my notepad, just write, need to shift it 100 semitones. So, oh sorry, just to explain what that means. So when you have the pitch shift here, each semitone is moving it up one pitch, and the cents are moving it in smaller increments. So let's say I know I have to move this by one semitone. In this case I don't, but let's just say I do. First, you have to put your pitch shift back to 0. Always reset it back to 0 before you make any changes. So once you know it, set it back to 0, go to the track, do the same thing, click on it, go to time and pitch machine, then make sure that your beats are not changing. So this is from last time I changed it, when I changed it from 81 to 85. So make this 0, make sure that's 0, and now your transposition is changing the pitch. So if I want to increase it by 100 semitones, I would just press 100. You can pre-listen just to make sure. Oops. You can pre-listen just to make sure that's the right one. Then I'd press process and paste. So I've already done that, so I'm not going to do it for the purposes of this. So then when you have them together and you make sure that they're matched up, in order to make sure that they're matched up, you can use these two bars here. These two bars will basically change the width of each track. So if you really want to go look into the waveforms, you can just expand this and make sure that they match up correctly. So this is a little bit off, so I'll just make sure they match correctly. Okay, perfect. So now we have two tracks that are pitch matched and tempo matched. So now you can put them together and basically make a really rudimentary mashup. So that's really the basics of mixing. Some other tools that are really useful. So you can go to a track, and to EQ the individual track, you just double click this. This will bring this up. The lower waves are basically for more bass heavy tones, and then the higher waves are the opposite. I'm still kind of learning how to EQ things, so but a lot of it is just sort of trial and error and just playing around with it. So let me think if there's anything else that is useful for mixing purposes. Oh, something that's important is you want to make sure. Oh, sorry, volume. Volume is really important. Okay, so in order to check a track's volume, you click on the track, you press A twice, and you'll get to this basically look. So this yellow bar basically tells you what the volume is of your track. So obviously if you push it higher, it'll make it higher. And then you can set individual points. So if I wanted like a fade in, then I would set 1 point there, 1 point here, and I've created a fade. If the volume is not writing for you properly, it's probably because you don't have this pressed, which is the edit tool. So just make sure that's pressed. So yeah, you can just make sure the volume, your volume is what you want, and then you can also not only edit volume, you can edit the I think panning is here. There's a lot of wait, I don't know where it is. Oh yeah, pan is here. You can change how the music pans from one headphone to the other. A lot of useful tools here that you can just check out when you get your time. So pan here, I don't have anything, but now I can switch it from one headphone to the other if I really wanted to. You can just play around with that. So then the last important thing is when you are playing a track, you make sure you really want to check your overall. Volume. So you want to make sure that it's not going too high and clipping, because that'll just sound really bad. So when you're doing this, just take a look at your over here to make sure that it's not constantly red, and you can just double check that after. When you play it on your headphones, you'll hear if it's clipping because it's too bass heavy. So So mine is too loud right here, so I'm probably gonna reduce some tracks to just make sure. So here's where it should be. So now it's not quite all the way to the top. So yeah, I mean that's pretty much it for the basics of mixing. I'm not sure if I forgot anything important, but if I did, you know, feel free to shoot me a message and I'll try and answer questions as best as I can. I'm still learning the new Logic Pro, so you know it's taking me some time. But yeah, I can try and answer questions as best as possible. So just hope this was helpful, and feel free to shoot me any questions. Thanks.